Good afternoon and welcome to WhatsApp Media Network Dearborn Mayoral Forum in partnership with the Dearborn Press and Guide. My name is Hassan Hashim, founder and CEO of WhatsApp Media Network. It's my pleasure and honor to be here and to be part of this event. Today we're going to have candidates who will basically present their plan and vision for Dearborn. An invitation was sent a few weeks ago to all 7 candidates. All candidates responded. However, only 3 candidates confirmed their attendance for the forum tonight. State Rep Abdullah Hamoud, Mr. Jim Pirelli, and Council President Susan Deveja. Unfortunately, Council President Susan Deveja had to reschedule a meeting from Tuesday at 6:30 to today, Thursday, the 22nd at 6:30, so she couldn't be with us here today, so her daughter Claudia will do the opening remarks for her. This is going to be a 1-hour forum. It's live, so whoever is watching us on social media platforms is able to be part of the conversations through comments, and also if you want to ask any question. It's my honor now to basically present our moderators, Dr. Christina Kalai and Attorney Mustafa Hawili.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mustafa Hawili. I'm a local attorney in the city of Dearborn. I've worked on campaigns on both the local and the state level, and I'll be one of your moderators for tonight.
Hi, my name is Christina Kalai. I'm a psychologist. I own a practice in Detroit, and I also have worked in the Dearborn Public Schools for 20 years as a psychologist. And I'm here on behalf of SEEN, which is a caucus special education advocacy movement.
So we'll begin today with opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their opening statement. When we put our 2 fingers up like this, that means your time is up. We will start with candidate Jim Pirelli, and we will make our way down.
Good evening. I'm Jim Pirelli. My grandparents came to Dearborn over 100 years ago. My wife Denise's parents immigrated from Italy in the 1950s. My grandfather started on the south end and worked at Ford for $5 a day. My father was a machinist at Ford, and my mother worked in the cafeteria at Woodward School for 40 years. My wife and I met at Fortson High School, and we've been married this year 39 years. We raised 2 sons who attended Divine Child, and now we have 3 beautiful grandchildren and another on the way. I have been in business for 40 years. Our taxes in this community are too high, and the post-pandemic world is going to present a number of challenges. I have the experience, the energy, and the temperament to manage our finances, lower our taxes, protect public safety, and bring new business, all while keeping the wonderful services we cherish here in Dearborn. Our campaign is proud to have the support of Chief Haddad, an amazing public service servant and the highest-ranking Arab American in the current administration. He has lowered crime and has always represented us with grace, wisdom, and respect. My opponents say they will either fire him on day one or they're taking endorsements from unions who want him out. They are playing politics with a first-class public safety professional. I think it's ridiculous. Also, I have worked deeply in the tech sector over the years, and under my administration, we will streamline city processes from building permits to the water bills. This will make resident experience smoother, save us money, which can be returned to our residents, and reduce our overheads. I've also proposed the resident rebate program where residents can get a tax break for spending money in Dearborn businesses. This will stimulate Dearborn businesses, attract more to our city, and relieve the resident tax burden. From my business experience, I know how to make this happen quickly and efficiently. As important, does that mean we're done, or?
Yeah, you get 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're good. We can wrap up, Jim.
I was just going to say, as important as who is here is who isn't. I'm running against people who say they want to represent the entire city and who say they want to unite the city. And this is now the second debate hosted by Arab Americans that they have skipped out on. Frankly, I'm shocked. Finally, diversity is our greatest asset here. Our campaign has spent significant time in all parts of our city, whether you pray on Fridays or Sundays. Dearborn's one big family. And when we see ourselves like that, we can achieve anything. Thank you.
Abdullah Hamoud, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you. You know, Dearborn is home. It always has been, and it always will be. And when I think of our hometown, I think of 3 words: culture, community, and connection. Culture. from the Maltese to the Italians and the Polish, to the beautifully diverse and vast Arab diaspora. Community, a city of 95,000 residents that still manages to sustain that small town homey feel where your neighbors and friends grow to be family. And connection. No matter where you are, you find yourself drawn back to this place that we all call Dearborn, catching yourself reminiscing about your childhood and upbringing. Everything we need to succeed as a city is right here, and it begins with each and every single individual that's tuning in, that's in this room. It begins with the entrepreneurs that continue to open up small businesses in our city, and it's in the corporations like Ford who are committed to reinvesting in our hometown. What's important, though, is having the right leadership at the helm of our city. We need a mayor who works for working families, who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues. And we need a mayor with the fresh ideas and a fresh perspective to move us forward. For the last 5 years as Dearborn State Representative, this is exactly what I have done. Work for the people, with the people. When corporate polluters sought to increase emissions in our city, we organized and rallied the community to push back, and we won. And we delivered to City Council the blueprints to the city's first ever environmental ordinance, a version of which they adopted. When we heard the countless stories of how our streets and neighborhoods were no longer safe because of the speeders, we were steadfast in our commitment to eliminating distracted and drunk driving, earning me the recognition as the Mothers Against Drunk Driving Legislator of the Year Award. And knowing that we are home to a thriving small business community, I focused my tenure on supporting the small mom and pop shops all throughout our city, only to double down when the pandemic hit, bringing down more information and more resources, helping deliver over $200 million to the hardest hit businesses across our state. And when the flooding swept through our neighborhoods, I never wasted time pointing fingers. I put on my work boots, we assembled a team, and we went door to door helping our neighbors. This is why I'm running for mayor, to continue to make progress on the tough issues and tackle the issues that are impacting our working families, to bring bold and trusted leadership to our city and to get things done. My name is Abdullah Hamoud, and I hope to earn your vote on August 3rd to be Dearborn's next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Claudia, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Claudia Hamoud, and I am the daughter of City Council President Susan Nabaja, candidate for mayor. My mother apologized that she couldn't be here tonight. She has to lead a council meeting, but asked that I appear for a brief statement. First, she wanted to thank Hassan Hashem and What's Up Media Network for sponsoring the event. There are a few things that you should know about my mom. She was born and raised in Dearborn South End. She attended Edsel Ford High School, U of M Dearborn, and U of D Law School, where she graduated first in her class and has a law practice here in Dearborn's East Side. She has served on City Council for almost 8 years, where she has eliminated parking meters, established business corridors on Dix and Warren Ave, chaired the local community stabilization authority, where she ensured the state reimbursed the city for lost revenue, championed the passage of the first of its kind environmental ordinance to combat fugitive dust, and improved air quality in the south end of Dearborn. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Furthermore, during the flooding we saw a few weeks ago, while her opponents were busy pointing fingers, dividing the city, and putting out false information, she stepped up to lead, making tough decisions for our community, helping residents clean their basements, calling for an investigation and evaluation of our city sewer system, holding down a town hall and resource distribution center, and allocating almost $2 million for cleanup efforts for the city of Dearborn only. My mom is the only candidate to secure funds to assist with flood cleanup efforts. She was open, transparent, and honest. That's the leader that Dearborn needs. My mother has a plan. It is a reasonable measure to reduce the tax burden on our city, but never compromising on services, never attacking public safety, and never defunding the police. Some candidates in this race have promised drastic reduction in taxes and promised you more city services. I guess some people will promise you the moon. Not my mom. She keeps it real. Her plan has been endorsed by people who are actually from this city. Organizations like the police union and the fire union who want to make sure the city has enough resources to keep us safe. Her platform has also been endorsed by the Dearborn Community Council, a group that is dedicated to holding our city leaders accountable. My mother is the only candidate who can bring people on opposite sides of an issue together. She is a unifier. People trust Susan Nabaja, and we're asking you for your vote on August 3rd. I'm asking you for your vote on August 3rd.
Thank you.
You know, I'm sorry. Am I able to just... She's not going to be here for the rest of the meeting because she had to reschedule. Can I just add a personal note to that? Is that possible?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. So, I'm telling you guys, I'm very nervous to speak. I'm not a great public speaker, but I just have to say this. My mom is and always has been my role model. I've never seen someone who works with as much passion and energy as her. Although she has 4 job titles, her council presidency, her candidacy, her law practice, and being a mother, which is honestly probably the most important thing to me at least, she never runs out of energy, at least not in front of me. She never runs out of courage either. This has been a gruesome election with some candidates resorting to attacking my family, to attacking me. I was embarrassed to come here today because I was scared that, at the last forum I spoke at, I was personally attacked. One thing I'm eternally proud to say is that we never stooped that low. Throughout the last 8 years, my mom has shown me more than ever that when others go low, we must go high. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The first question is going to go to Abdullah Hamoud. Recent flooding has devastated the city and has left many people questioning the city's response. How do you plan to not only start fixing the problem to make sure the infrastructure is updated, but to make sure residents see the progress and know that it's happening across the entire city?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. In 2014, Dearborn flooded. And the question that residents are asking is, what did Dearborn do? When we look to neighboring communities, we can look to examples of what they implemented to try to mitigate and minimize the number of homes that have been impacted. In the late 80s, Taylor was flooded. And what government officials did was they used a creative solution. They added retention basins and turned them into city-owned golf courses, which lessened the impact. If we look at the city of Westland, the city of Westland overhauled its ordinances after 2014 flooding to reduce grease within our sewer lines and improve the maintenance of their lines by blasting jets of water year-round to clear debris. If we look at the city of Ann Arbor is building a detention basin the size of a football field to capture future rainwater and prevent flooding in its neighborhoods. And it also offers storm credits to residents to construct and build rain gardens on their properties. If you look to Detroit and just drive down Oakman Boulevard from Dearborn to Detroit turned Oakman Boulevard's median into a retention basin as well as giant rain gardens to capture thousands of gallons of rainwater. And so we can look to neighboring communities about what they did to mitigate and minimize the impact for neighboring homes. But what's needed and what was called for by Councilman Serini back in 2018 and not supported by any other council person was a third-party assessment as to why the city has continually flooded. We need an outside perspective and a trusted perspective as to why and how this happens, but most importantly, what we can do to prevent this from happening in the future.
Jim, your response? Same question.
Well, if the flood has taught us in this community anything the last few weeks, it's taught us that politics as usual is not working for Dearborn. We need change in the way we approach it. My experience in business has taught me to find solutions efficiently and quickly. In business, when the sewer project was signed in 2007, and in 2014 we had the flood, the original contract was for $78 million. Today we're at 350 some million. There is no way in my world that I've spent 40 years in that you could get away with that in the accountability. We have someone running in this race who was on the council for 16 years. We have another person in this race who was council president when the last flood occurred. There is no way you could get away with $300 million increase in cost without some heads rolling. Well, the residents of this community have a chance to roll some heads. I did what I could do, and I did it the best way I could. I congratulated Abdullah at his congratulatory barbecue and all the people that helped. But I was able to call a CEO of a large construction carrier who came in with their big trucks and helped clean out the streets. I've been told by the city that they helped thousands of residents. That made me feel good. We've heard that this is a once-in-a-millennium event, and now it's happened twice in 7 years. But I don't want to keep focusing on the fact that it's happened twice in 7 years. How in the hell did we go from 79 million to 350 million while these people sat there in this council and then in this government? That's what I want to know.
Thank you for your responses. The second question will be for you, Jim. You will answer first. Many residents who did have some flood insurance are being denied claims by FEMA. For many, their insurance payouts are mere pennies on the dollar for damages. What would you do to help those residents repair their homes and businesses?
Look, this is going to be a nightmare. The reason is, if anyone's ever dealt with the federal government, they know how many steps and how many levels are involved and how many promises are made, and then you got to read the fine print, and oh, that water heater's not covered, that furnace should have been this power and it would have been covered, and this and that. And so it's likely that our residents are going to get some compensation, but they're going to get some compensation probably middle of next year. I just talked to Chief Haddad, who just spent 2 days with FEMA here, and they're setting up at the second floor of the Centennial Library to take our residents in to fill out the forms. You can imagine that process and all the details. So I have proposed already that if I were mayor, I would set up a resident fund. This is Dearborn, Michigan. We have the Capitol, we have the Ford Motor Company. We have the ability to have a fund. Look, we're not going to be able to reimburse someone who loses $30,000 in a flood. But there should be something that the city can do to help people through this difficult period, whether it's paying for labor to help clean it out, whether it's, you know, just enough money to get them groceries and what have you. But there should be some fund set up to support our residents, and that I proposed that a few weeks back, and that's one aspect of it as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Mr. Hammoud?
Thank you so much. You know, it doesn't take a title to lead. When the flooding happened at 3:30 in the morning, we came up with the idea of putting out a Google form, one to sign up volunteers and one to identify homes that needed assistance. And by the time that the city held their press conference and announced that they think the flooding impacted 300 homes, we had signed up over 600 homes that needed assistance. We assembled teams day in and day out and went door to door helping folks to alleviate them of the troubles, to get the sewage water out of their basements, as well as the furniture and large debris. And then what did I do? I contacted other cities that have gone through this. I reached out to my counterparts in the city of Midland, and I asked them, what happened to you after the flooding? Once you got the water out, what was the next step? We know it has to be with mold and decontaminating basements. And so I connected with Samaritan's Purse, a national nonprofit that is now here headquartered in Dearborn, after I took them on a tour of the city to show them how damaged Dearborn was. And now they're signing up about 25 to 30 homes a day and helping decontaminate at no cost. This is the type of leadership that we need, somebody who utilizes the relationships that they have at all levels of government. As it pertains to the funding, we have to continually work with all levels of government, which is why it's more important than ever to have a mayor who understands Lansing, who understands DC, and who has a strong relationships at the county. We need to work with our federal legislators to update the flood maps to ensure that Dearborn residents can purchase flood insurance. We have to work with Lansing and the county and the city to make sure we conduct an assessment. So when that President Biden's American Jobs Plan Act passes, we are positioning ourselves with a solution to bring down historic levels of infrastructure funding to resolve this issue.
Thank you.
We are coming out of a coronavirus pandemic that devastated the economy. Do you have a specific plan to stimulate the economy in Dearborn? And if so, what is it? And please be specific. This goes to Abdullah first.
Thank you so much. There's nothing I like more than providing specific plans. To date, just being 10 to 12 days out of the election, we are the only campaign with a clear vision and a clear plan, provided in 2 languages as well, in Arabic and English at votehammoud.com/issues. And I implore everybody to please go out and check it out. And so as the only public health professional and epidemiologist in this race, I also have a robust COVID recovery plan that prioritizes our families first. And it's a 5-part public health recovery and a 5-part economic recovery. Our first part of the economic recovery is actually providing greater technical assistance through our economic development team. It's retooling our economic development team to be consumer-oriented, to work for small businesses, asking them, what is it that you need and how can we help? We shouldn't be letting them to fend for themselves, to be submitting for grants or applications to the federal government. We should be assisting in that manner, going door to door to every small business, asking, what can we do for you? Secondly, we want to launch a small business incubator. We have many vacant storefronts across our city, but we also have a lot of entrepreneurs with great ideas. But what they're missing is possibly the startup funds. So we have the ideas of partnering with institutions in the city of Dearborn, like the Arab American Chamber of Commerce, our Dearborn Chamber of Commerce, U of M Dearborn, Henry Ford College, to try to place entrepreneurs with better business plans into empty storefronts to try to avoid a post-pandemic recession. Our third step is recruiting and retaining businesses to Dearborn. We have to put our bulldog hats on. We have to go out there, work with the corporations that are here, and try to recruit other corporations that have synergies with entities like Beaumont and Ford and bringing them to Dearborn. And our fourth is improving our permitting process. We have the idea of a fast pass. And finally, improving the operations of our own city-managed facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pirelli.
Well, with 40 years in business, I've spent a lot of time working closely with corporate America, and I've said from the beginning of this race that due to Dearborn's location between a Renaissance city of Detroit and a great airport, if we have a mayor who's a leader and stands up and lets the community in Detroit as well as around the country know that Dearborn is open for business, it should be a fairly easy pitch to get people to come here, as Abdullah says, to work in synergy with the large employers that are already here, like Ford and Beaumont. But also, he mentioned a incubator. I call them a tech accelerator. I've actually built one, and what they do is they create jobs. They create startups for companies people to create that have great ideas. It creates funding opportunities. And because of what the state is doing out of Lansing, a guy named Trevor Paul, right? Trevor Paul is his name. He's like heading this effort for the state. And the fact that we're here with the synergies of Ford, I think this accelerator in Dearborn should be focused on mobility. And I think that would, having 40 years in finance, I can tell you that that would attract a lot of venture and private equity money. I've also introduced the resident rebate program, which allows residents to spend money here in registered Dearborn businesses before they go outside of the city and receive a rebate back to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Jim, this question will be for you. What new businesses do you think the city needs, and how would your administration work to bring them to the city?
Well, look, I said just a second ago, the mayor has to lead, and the mayor has to lead through letting everyone know that this city is open for business. And the mayor has to have the business acumen and the experience to be able to sit at the table across from CEOs of companies and be able to work a deal. I've done it for 40 years. I know how to do that. So, and as far as those types of businesses, you know, any synergies, I think also, synergies with Ford and Beaumont and that, but I also think because of the corridor going down Greenfield, we have a lot of availability there, and the second bridge is being built, which isn't too far from that area. So you would think that that would be awfully attractive to logistics and companies that want to distribute into Canada, and they could distribute into Canada in a very efficient, cost-effective way based on that corridor there. I'll just add, I don't think we need any more hookah shops, and I don't think we need any more restaurants, frankly. This is a great food town.
Thank you, Jim. Abdullah?
Thank you so much. You know, Dearborn is that unique place where the small business haven, home to many small business entrepreneurs all throughout our city, South End Business District, Southwest, East Michigan Avenue, West Michigan Avenue, the Warren Schaefer Corridor. But we're also home to corporations like Ford, to Beaumont, which is soon to be Spectrum Health, to the universities and colleges, to Carhartt and other industry. But rather than me tell residents what I think we need, it has to flip. The city has to be conducting assessments and asking residents what is it that they would like to see. If you go to a lot of our downtown districts, what differs between Dearborn and others is we lack some of the main retail anchors that help bring foot traffic. And in the post-pandemic era, where Dearborn is considered a commuter city, where folks traditionally commute to work. Well, what happens when you're working from home? When you're no longer coming during your lunch break to spend your dollars at our local restaurants or staying afterwards to spend money at your local diner or restaurant. We have to now make the convincing argument that Dearborn is the place that you want to choose to live. But it also requires us creating robust downtowns all throughout our city. We have to be equitable in the way that we invest, ensuring that we have business districts and amending the zoning in some of the South End communities so they have opportunities to build new small businesses, to help us bring down some of these anchor stores that can bring foot traffic and bring life to our downtowns and our small businesses. And so rather than tell you what businesses we need, under a Hamoud administration, what we're going to do is conduct an assessment and ask residents, what type of businesses would you like to see? And then we're going to try to go out there and use every lever that we have to bring those businesses to town.
Thank you.
Student safety is, of course, the #1 priority for the district and for parents. The amount of vacant buildings in Dearborn are increasing at alarming rates, with reports of loitering from teens, destroying property, and evidence of drug paraphernalia. This raises concerns about safety. What will you do to decrease the amount of blight, vacant buildings, not only near schools, but overall in the city to make Dearborn a safer place for all? And this goes to Mr. Abdullah first.
Thank you. So, no, thank you so much. So as it pertains to blight and the empty storefronts, we spell it out in our plan that we have online, our five-part economic recovery plan under the COVID recovery plan. And so as we spoke to earlier, you want to have a business incubator that places entrepreneurs into empty storefronts in order to avoid a post-pandemic recession. As it pertains to the blight or these larger buildings, for example, Village Plaza. I had a roundtable with a bunch of young people, and what they told me was they hang out in the abandoned Village Plaza where they basically sit around and they vape. Or they're hanging out atop of the 3rd level of the Wagner parking lot. And the reality is they're doing this because they feel like they have no community center that meets their needs. The Civic Center was the place that I want to hang out in, but it's still the same rock wall, the same gym, the same equipment, and the same courts, and they haven't diversified what they're offering to the young people of today. And so what we need to do is try to find an opportunity to ask them, what is it that they would like to see? We see other communities like Sterling Heights making family gym nights back a reality, and people are taking advantage of that. We see other communities opening up EA Sports game rooms where you can come and have loaned an Xbox and a PlayStation and play with other young people, because not every family in a city like Dearborn can also afford those types of gaming systems at their households. And so we have to diversify what we're offering to our families and also making it affordable. We also have to make it accessible and make sure transportation is there. For residents in the South and East End or in other parts of the West End, they might not always have transportation to get to the Civic Center or community centers. So we also have to address that need as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pirelli.
Well, in a post-COVID world, I've been saying for a number of weeks now, in a post-COVID world, this municipality, the city of Dearborn, and many others across the city, or across the country, are faced with challenges. Structural challenges that occurred because of COVID. I mean, just right here, very glaring in this community, is our largest employer, by the fall, is only having their employees come back to work in their offices 2 days a week. Abdullah would agree, this is a problem for retail. Why? Because, like, for instance, the Ford block, Ford spent $60-some million there. Restaurants made commitments to, and clothing stores made commitments to leases because there was going to be 900 autonomous vehicle engineers upstairs. Well, they haven't been there for a long time, and they're not coming back anytime soon. In addition to that, Ford Land has a number of buildings for sale. This is another problem. It all will eventually, funnel down to leadership. So somebody in the mayor's office, this next mayor, has to be able to lead and be able to have a relationship in the business community to be able to attract new businesses to this community, because there is a lot of blight. And I don't like to hear what you're talking about, these kids loitering, or as Abdullah saying, vaping at the Village Plaza. This is unbelievable. So, that's another question over public safety and policing as well.
Thank you.
Dearborn is one of the highest tax cities in the state. Granted, that means services in most areas are also superior. Do you have an idea on how to maintain these services but also lower the tax budget? Jim, we'll start with you.
Well, when I announced in February, I identified the post-COVID challenges, and I also said that our residential taxes were unsustainable long-term. They're unsustainable because the lifeblood of any community is young families being able to come here and being able to raise their families here and spend their money here so that we have a viable business community, we have employment, we have, people having a great quality of life. My wife and I, both Dearborn, born and raised, decided to stay here and raise our family. And when you raise your family here, you spend your money here, you support the restaurants, the cleaners, the grocery stores, etc. Abdullah's doing the same thing with hopefully his young family soon. And this is how we have to move forward. We also have to be able to build more housing. There's going to be a lot of opportunities with Ford going forward with the right leadership to be able to build housing that is attractive to this new generation. The Arab American News had an article about it this past week, which we showed on our page because we wanted to say that we thought this was exactly correct. This is the direction which we have to move. To be able to attract new families, we have to attract new families, and they have to stay here. And the way you do it is through building housing that they're attracted to and creating the opportunities for them to have not only a life here to live, but also work and play.
Thank you, Jim. Abdullah?
Thank you. Again, plans and visions, things that residents have been asking for at the beginning of this campaign. People are tired of the billboards, the bullet points and the statements without clear visions and clear plans. And so we're offering one. If you go to votehamoud.com/issues, we have a property tax plan. And we took it a step further. We provided numbers. We even give you a range based on your market value and taxable value of your home of what you can expect in savings based on our 5-part solution. The crux of our plan focuses on this one issue of our unfunded liabilities. The city of Dearborn has a lot of debt, over $300 million in fact. And a big chunk of our budget is paid into an annual obligation payment to try to pay down this debt. But the problem is, over the last decade, the city and its leaders have mismanaged this unfunded liabilities, and it's ballooned year over year, and it's eating up a greater portion of our budget. And so we put together a realistic plan, taking the best examples from across the country. We looked at Columbus, Ohio, and I hate to say that. We looked at Kalamazoo, Michigan. We looked at North Dakota, and I spoke with experts at Wayne County, at the state of Michigan, and even at Dearborn Public Schools, who all have utilized elements of our plan into their own budgets. What do? We pay down a chunk of our unfunded liabilities, and what that means is we keep our promises to our first responders, to police and fire who have retired, making sure they can retain their health care and their benefits and their pensions, as well as our city employees, and increasing the level at which they're funded. 2, we accelerate responsible housing and economic development. We know that Ford is selling much land, but we have to be wise in who we bring in, how we build new housing for young families, affordable housing, and also bring in new economic development. And then there's 3 more parts talking about establishing an organization that finally commutes with one another between the schools, the city, the local small business owners, the Fortune 500 companies and residents. And lastly, establishing a financially beneficial relationship with local credit unions. We currently bank with Comerica Bank, but I picked up the phone and I called the president of the Credit Union Association, whom I know through my relationships in Lansing, and asked if we shift over to credit unions, are there financial advantages that Dearborn residents can see? And the answer was yes. So just by changing who we bank with, we can see new dollars invested into our community. And so we have our plan, and I hope you check it out.
Thank you.
The city seems to frequently ask for temporary millages and then seek to renew most of them. Would you seek to stop renewing millages that were supposed to be temporary in order to help lower the tax burden on residents? This question goes to Mr. Hammoud.
Thank you so much. As the only candidate with a concrete property tax plan, we demonstrate how we can achieve a savings to eliminate some of the burden that the city has on its portion of the tax bill. And so, yes, we have a tax plan that we put in place without cutting services. We actually enhance the services that we're able to offer, because I live in the world where I can is a reality. I'm tired of the naysayers. I'm tired of folks who have been in the office for so long telling us, you can't do, you can't do, you can't do. The question before us isn't one of magic, it's one of math. We have to make the numbers work, and we've put it together in a concrete way and made it available for the public to see. We can put together a tax plan that brings Dearborn's tax millage rate down to more of the Wayne County average, around that 54, 55, 56 mills. Whereas right now we're one of the highest. I think we're 26th on the list within cities in Wayne County with close to 62 mills. So yes, we have a proposal that actually realizes and provides a pathway to eliminating some of the temporary millages that Dearborn has asked for time and time again.
Mr. Perley.
Yes, I'm also in favor of addressing the unfunded liabilities. I'm the only candidate in this race that understands the capital markets. I've spent 40 years in the capital markets. I understand how to raise capital in the capital markets. It's a wonderful time for the city with its bond rating to go to the capital markets and borrow money at it's virtually free today where interest rate levels are. And nobody ever knows if they're going to go lower, but they're pretty darn low right now. And when you consider a city like Dearborn could borrow at 1.5% or something like that, it makes it awfully attractive to be able to eliminate unfunded liabilities that Abdullah referred to. And I understand the capital markets, and that would be certainly an option for the city to be able to pursue. I forget the rest of your question.
It's about keeping the tax burden low.
Well,
the question was essentially about keeping temporary millages, and do you have an interest in decreasing the residents' taxes?
Yeah, obviously I do. That was one of my things I said when I announced. But, you know, saying it and doing it, right, are two different things. And nothing's going to happen overnight. But if you can get the leadership in City Hall that addresses these issues and looks for solutions such as unfunded liabilities, such as our resident rebate program, giving residents a opportunity to spend their money here instead of going to Allen Park or Dearborn Heights and getting a rebate on that.
Thank you very much.
Is it possible to follow up? Not just to add more. Is that a possibility? 1 minute? So here's what I'll say.
I'm fine with
it. You know, a lot of folks talk about what it takes to lower property taxes. It takes experience. It takes the ability to manage funds. Prior to assuming office, I helped manage the country's largest retiree trust fund, which was for the UAW. It was to the tunes of billions of dollars, over 800,000 retirees across our country. And what we delivered were ways to decrease the cost while increasing the quality of care that was still delivered to UAW retirees as possible. At the state of Michigan, I chair, for the Democrats, the Health and Human Services budget. $30 billion of the state's $60 billion over the last 3 years. And what we've done is we found ways to actually cut and save taxpayer dollars. Over $200 million we have saved, while also improving the quality of care that we deliver through our Health and Human Services Department. So to those who say it can't be done, I say you are wrong. You have to be innovative, and we have to be bold with the solutions that we present. And that is exactly what we have done on our website, and I hope people check it out. Thank you.
I'll give you a chance, Mr.
Yeah, by the way, a lot of people in general in the community probably don't know this, but, you know, obviously being a professional in the financial world for 40 years, the financial markets have had an incredible period of time, right, the last 2 or 3 years. And the Dearborn pension system has done so well. It's so over its actuarial points that they need to meet their liabilities, that in 2023 it's going to have a substantial impact on the amount of money that the city has to put back into these liabilities that both Abdullah and I have referred to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If elected mayor, would you consider privatizing city services in order to help cut and maintain the budget? Jim, you'll go first.
I would not. And the reason is I think through proper management and leadership and getting more out of our people, we can be more productive, we can be more efficient by using technology. And also, I just think that when you privatize services, in my lifetime, in my experience with business, never in a municipality, but when you privatize business or services, you have a tendency to lose control of them. Mm-hmm. And when you lose control of them, it's hard to get back. And then you're in the municipality's case, you'd be dealing with resident complaints, taxpayer complaints. So you go back to the person that you and the council approved to take the private contract. I don't know. It just, for me, I'd rather have the carrot in the hands of the leadership of this community than in the hands of the leadership of a private entity.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Hammoud?
Thank you so much. You know, similar to Jim, I would not privatize the services that we offer. These are public services. And I think as a mayor, when we build our team, and we're one of the only candidates who have said this, what I said was I would build a community transition team upon a successful election, God willing. Build a community transition team and collectively have residential input on the directors that are appointed throughout my administration, so that people have confidence in those who are leading within our city. We want competence, we want trust, and we want accessibility, which has been lacking in the current administration. But we do not want to privatize. What we want to do is ensure that the services we're delivering is impacting and improving the quality of life for our residents all across our city, because ultimately that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve and ensure that the services are to the level that residents demand them and expect them to be and deserve them to be. And so what we'll do is find efficiencies. We've laid this out in our property tax plan as well, by integrating new technologies, by eliminating some old technologies that have been inundated, something that I was successful in doing in Lansing in the Health and Human Services Department, eliminating a lot of bureaucracy. And what tends to happen is you bring people together to communicate. Something I have noticed within our own city is that many department heads don't communicate with one another, and that's a problem. We have to make sure that we have robust team and leaders who are willing to communicate with one another across departments in order for us to deliver efficient city services across the board. But something we want to keep in-house, because I'm a big believer that sometimes it might not be the cheapest if we keep it in-house, but I can guarantee it's going to be the best quality, and that's what we have to always go after.
Thank you.
What city services or departments do you think needs the most improvement? And what will you do to start down that path for them? And this goes to Mr. Hammoud first.
This is a tough question. You know, it's difficult from the outside looking in to tell you on how the day-to-day operations are happening currently within City Hall. But what we want to do, like I said, is build this community transition team. Have folks around the table who understand what it takes to be a member of the DPW team or a member of our economic development team. You know, I've never been a snowplow driver. I can't tell you what it takes to be a great snowplow driver. My job as mayor isn't to point the finger and say, you're a poor performer. My job as mayor is to ask these workers within our city, what is it that you need to do your job well? And then for me to go out there and to get it. And to make sure that we have an environment and leadership at the helm of that department who respects the people that are working for them. And I know there's been a big morale issue within our city across departments, including our public safety departments. And so we want to address these issues. We want to make sure we have qualified folk. So I'm not sure what department we would start with. You know, our transition team is one that's going to evaluate every department across the city. And together we're going to construct and develop ways to do things better, because there's always continuous ways to be better. I strongly and firmly believe that, especially for a city that's felt like it's been in cruise control or autopilot for a long time. As somebody who's been born and raised here, there are some things that just haven't changed in 30 years. It's time to kick it back into drive and to move us forward.
Thank you. I also agree that it's awfully difficult to address specifics from the outside. You want to be inside. Any leader would want to be inside, want to be able to touch the people that are actually involved on a daily basis, understand exactly what's going on. And I think that's where my 40 years of business will come in huge for the city, because I've had these kinds of sessions over and over and over again over the years and made decisions about money. And that, after all, that's what it's, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. It's about money. I'll tell you what we hear as we move around the community and talk to different residents in all different sections of the community. You hear a lot of complaints about building and safety. You hear, you know, contractors. Being Italian, I know a lot of contractors. And, you know, they're always saying, Jesus, I don't even want to work in Dearborn. It's just not friendly. So I think we would all agree that that for sure needs to be looked at very closely, because if we're going to put the sign up that says we're open for business, we better be able to handle the flow when it starts, because you only get one shot at these guys in the corporate world. There is accountability in the corporate world. You get one shot. You don't deliver, they're gone.
Thank you.
Dearborn has a traffic control problem with accidents and speeding cars seemingly on every corner of the city. How would you work to try and get drivers to be more cautious while in the city of Dearborn? Jim, go ahead.
Well, listen, this has gotten so out of hand. It even, I mean, it's even waking me up now in the middle of the night. I'm a pretty sound sleeper. I mean, these cars are ripping, down the streets, the neighborhoods. It's just not acceptable. So, you have to have a very serious heart-to-heart with the leadership at the police force and understand about our manpower and how we can address, bringing this under control. It's more than just writing tickets. I think we got to be really tough. I was just reading last week that they impounded a car of a guy doing 100 miles an hour down Schaefer, and that car is going into the auction. He's never getting it back. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Very tough stance. I have no problem if people refer to me after I'm elected as the mayor, the public safety mayor, because that I was endorsed by the chief, and I have to know. Look, I have 4 young grandchildren in Chicago, and I understand. I raise children. I have to know that the families in this community are safe while their parents may be at a wedding or out to dinner or what have you. So I'll be very, very tough and strong on public safety.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Hammoud?
Thank you. There's a strong consensus among Dearborn residents that our neighborhoods and our streets no longer feel safe for our children or for our families because of speeding and reckless driving. During my tenure in Lansing, we realized this was an issue, which is why I helped actually draft the legislation to eliminate distracted driving, was one of a very proud co-sponsor, and why I drafted legislation to help tackle drunk driving, which earned me the recognition as the Mothers Against Drunk Driving Legislator of the Year. In Dearborn, on this issue, we have a plan. I'm going to say this often. votehammoud.com/issues. We have a plan on road safety. And it's a 3-part plan. The first deals with implementing traffic calming measures. There are ways that have been shown in the way that you engineer and design neighborhood streets to mitigate and reduce the likelihood of cars speeding. Some of which include widening sidewalks, including bike lanes, making it seem so when you're driving on a roadway, it doesn't seem so open, even though the lane sizes might not change. The second is we want to shift police enforcement's focus from non-moving traffic violations to moving violations such as speeding and reckless driving. And we've seen a new traffic enforcement team that has emerged issuing tickets. But this is an example that we took out of Lafayette, North Carolina, excuse me. And they saw a dramatic and significant reduction in those that were speeding. And it also helped address a few more issues. And the third is we want to coordinate a community public messaging campaign. We have to work with our schools, we have to work with local stakeholders, small businesses, the corporations, other nonprofits, to educate families and young drivers and parents about the importance of speeding and the impact it's also having on our auto insurance. We have some of the highest auto insurance rates because we have some of the highest car theft rates here in the city of Dearborn, as well as every time Jim drives and speeds and gets a ticket, if I'm his neighbor, it's going to impact my auto insurance rates. So we have to educate our community members about how this is also impacting working families financially.
Which, by the way, is never.
Yeah.
Never speeding, never. I get beeped at because I'm going too slow.
A huge portion of the city budget goes to police and fire services. Would you support a charter amendment that would lower the minimum staffing requirement? This goes to Mr. Hammoud first.
Would I support a charter requirement?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
A huge portion of the city budget goes to police and fire services. Would you support a charter amendment that would lower the minimum staffing requirement?
So I will support and fund our public safety departments, and we're the only campaign that has an actual comprehensive plan for how we tackle public safety, and it's 4 parts. The first of which is mental health, ensuring that residents have access to mental health services, but also making sure our first responders have access to mental health resources that they need, because we know the data is clear. More first responders lose their lives to suicide than they do in the line of data. The second is a public safety task force, things we'd love to incorporate into the charter as well. A task force that's made up of a roundtable of folks who go on ride-alongs with our officers, our firefighters, and dispatchers, who understand and can tackle the questions of what does it mean to be productive? How do we improve our training and assessment? How to improve local recruitment and create these pipelines within our community? The third is, we have mental health, public safety task force. The third is community policing. I'm a big believer, Dearborn is divided into 8 precincts. We want the same officers, the same dispatchers, working the same precincts so you can build that relationship. As it pertains to the charter amendment on staffing, for me, I don't think it's always about staffing with more people. We have more officers than any other police department throughout Wayne County. Yet if you look at our outcomes don't reflect that. We don't always have to police with more bodies. What we have to do is police smarter. And we want to utilize a public safety task force that makes sure that Dearborn's always innovative, looking at best case and best practice examples across the country and seeing what we can do right here at home to implement some of those ideas and tailor them to the needs of Dearborn.
Thank you. Mr.
Question.
A huge portion of the city budget goes to police and fire services. Would you support a charter amendment that would lower the minimum staffing requirement?
No. As I said a moment ago, I'm very strong on public safety. I also agree with what Abdullah just said. Maybe it's not, the number of people. It's what are we, how are we managing it? What are we getting out of them? We can also employ a lot more technology today. Being in the business world, I'm privy to some of this technology. It's available for public safety, and it's not overly expensive. And I've had these discussions with Chief Haddad, so that technology, is really the eyes on the streets and in the neighborhoods and in the parks in lieu of a person. So we have enough people. I don't necessarily agree with cutting that back. I would not be in favor of that, but I think we want to get, be more efficient and use more technology to fight crime and keep our community very, very safe.
Can I do one more follow-up on this one? With your permission. So I just want to add a few clarifying points. 30 seconds. We currently don't follow the charter requirement. I want to make that clear. And the charter requirement bases our staffing ratio based on the 2010 census. And Dearborn is actually declining in population. And so I also want to make a note of that. And thirdly is, there are some entities in Dearborn that bully our public safety department, such as Walmart. There's a lot of crimes of poverty that happen at Walmart. Somebody might take a gallon of milk or a t-shirt. And what it does is it pulls 2 or 3 squad cars out of our neighborhoods to Walmart to address that issue. It's time we made Walmart pay for the overtime for our officers and first responders because they're pulling services out of our neighborhoods.
Mr. Pirelli, you have 30 seconds as well.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
If elected mayor, how would you improve transparency in your administration and ensure that the public has access to every aspect of city government? Jim, we'll begin with you.
Well, again, you need sound financial reporting. And again, 41 years in the business community. I read financial statements like most people read, the TV guide. I am not at all encumbered by hundreds of millions of dollars. I've been in that world for 40 years, and we would surround ourselves with very competent people in the financial aspect of the city. And in my case, as elected mayor, they'd be working with me, and it would be a very quick study for me because I understand the language when they would come forward and talk about this budget, that area, this funding, this bond, et cetera. It's all second nature to me. So I would have the ability to be very quick, and we would be very transparent with everyone. And after all, it is the people's money. We forget that. It's the people's money. It's not ours.
Thank you, Jim. Abdullah?
Thank you so much. One of the things I'll say is over my last 5 years as state representative, we've held more town halls, coffee hours than any other elected official in the city. And so that's something that we'll continue to do is meet people where they are. Continuously hold sessions every single month or every quarter to meet residents where they are. And so there are several things that I would do as mayor, though, to increase transparency and accessibility. One, we talked about a community transition team. What is more transparent than allowing community buy-in into the appointment of the directors that you're making within the city, ensuring that no deals were cut along the campaign trail? No other candidate is talking about this. We're the only campaign. Second, language accessibility. We want to make sure that everything that the city makes available to residents on our website or in what we're mailing to residents, we also have available in the Arabic language at minimum, because we know we have a large population within the city where English is second language and Arabic is the first language. Third, we want to meet people where they are. Oftentimes what happens is a meeting is called, you have to go to city chambers or go on CCTV in order for you to watch the meeting. It's time we took these meetings on the road. It's time the mayor held town halls at community parks to pull neighbors in and to present to them what our future budget is, or to ask them what types of things they would like to see in their budgets. We can take things on the road. It doesn't always have to be people have to come to government. It's time for government to go on the road and go to people. And lastly, we want to utilize our block parties. One thing that we want to implement when we're in office is organizing block parties in every neighborhood across the city and asking the residents and bringing the directors along. Give us the top 5, top 10 things you would love to see change within our first term. And that is going to be our task and to-do list within our first 4 years, asking residents for their direct input and what they want out of their government. Thank you.
I would just add that whoever the next mayor is of this community, he'll have an office, but his office should be out in the streets with the residents and the business owners. Dearborn has gone through, frankly, hell with COVID and now these floods. The people, I hear it, they're crying out for a champion. They're crying out for leadership. The way that you can lead, the way that you can win over their confidence, the way that you can have them understand that we're on the road to recovery is to be with them, as Abdullah said, not in the office holding private meetings.
Mr. Hamoud, would you like a follow-up?
Oh, thank you.
What are your recommendations for addressing and drug addiction crisis? I'm sorry. What are the recommendations for addressing the mental health and drug addiction crisis in our community? This goes to Mr. Hamoud first.
Thank you so much. You know, as the only public health professional in this race, this is something that I'm very passionate about. And if you look at my tenure in Lansing, these are the types of issues that we have been tackling. It was my legislation that drove the administration to make a change. Prior to me being in Lansing, if you suffered from an alcohol addiction, you could not go to your primary care provider and be visited for an alcohol addiction. Yet, if you went for an opioid addiction, you could be seen. We changed the administrative rules, and now you have access for those suffering from alcohol addiction as well. Issues of mental health, substance and drug use are near and dear to me because I know many family members and friends and neighbors who have suffered. So if you look at our public health recovery plan, one of the things that we have is launching a mental health crisis response team, making sure that we have trained mental health professionals and helping alleviate some of the burden that should not have been put on our public safety professionals to begin with. Ensuring that they can go out and assist residents who are suffering from substance and drug use, from homelessness, from anxiety or stress or whatever it might have been. Making sure that they have access to true professionals. And the other thing I'll point out is we also have a public health commission that we want to create. Having a roundtable of the nonprofits that are focused on issues of mental health within our community, because there are several, but there's nobody pulling them together to coordinate the way in which we're appropriating our resources to tackle this issue at its core. And it's not easy, but these are the things that we have to do. So we're the only ones talking about coordinating a public health commission to help tackle some of these mental health issues, as well as launching a mental health crisis response team looking to Livonia, Canton, Eugene, Oregon, or Denver, Colorado as examples for what we can do here.
Thank you, Mr. Pirelli.
When I was a young man growing up in the city of Dearborn, I remember the health department. My mom used to take me to the health department for checkups, for shots, for different things over the years. And I would sure advocate in this day and age, the hometown of the Ford Motor Company and Henry Ford, that we could have the Dearborn Health Department again. Number one. Number two, I identified many, many months ago about the opioid problem in this city. A lot of it goes undiscussed and unmentioned, but underneath, if you talk to these doctors around the community, there is a real problem with opioids in this community. One of the things I advocated for was bringing back the drug court. I still remember a young man, I thought the world of him. His name was Rabia Othman. And just by chance, he was downtown coming out of a casino and he was shot 4 or 5 times. He lived, but just from recovery, he went from being put on an opioid to, he got up to 70 pills a day. I mean, these are real life issues that we're dealing with in this community all the time with our youth. And so I would bring back the drug court. I would give the courts here the funding, the ability to be able to address these issues internally within our community.
Thank you. We have one more question for you.
Before we go on to our closing statements, I'm going to pass the camera along to Mr. Hashim, and he's going to have some questions for you guys from online and from the crowd as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa. We're gonna take one question from Facebook, and we're gonna take one question from the studio. Kimberly on Facebook is asking, what's your plan to have access to affordable housing in Dearborn? Abdullah, we'll start with you.
So one of the things we're hearing from a lot of young families is they want access to affordable housing. What we have the opportunity to do now is, since we know Ford is selling many of its properties, the one silver lining there is we can work with future developers to make sure that they have access to affordable housing here in the city of Dearborn. So that's something that we're willing to do. As mayor, you want to work with these developers, ensuring that you're conducting an assessment of what young families or families in Dearborn are currently looking for or prospectively looking for, and ensuring that those housing options are available. So that's the best thing we can do, is coordinate and have a strategic vision, have a 5, 10, 15-year plan. In our tax plan, we talk about creating the Dearborn Way Commission. And this models after what Columbus, Ohio did, creating the Columbus Way. It's having the city at the table with the schools, with Fortune 500 companies, with small businesses, with informed residents. And collectively, they talk about a strategic vision over the 5, 10, 15 years, the philanthropic investments they make, the way in which they invest the city's dollars, as well as the vision they have for the types of housing options they make available. So that's something that we want to bring to Dearborn.
Jim?
Well, as I said earlier, it's critical to my plan to lead this community. You need to have the ability to attract young families that are going to want to live here and raise their families here. And the only way they're going to do it is if the young people are getting the product that they want. Too often you hear when you're out on the campaign trail, I can't afford a center entrance colonial in this community because I have to redo all parts of it. And by the time I get done with it, and then the city hits me with the increased taxes, I've got much, much more than I would spend in buying a new product, that could be built to my specifications. One of the other things that I have talked about and I want to just touch on as it relates to housing is that Dearborn, even though it's, with Ford, it's an auto capital of the world, we also in this community could be an education capital, because we have Henry Ford Community College, we have the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I have had conversations already with Lawrence Tech and Eastern and Oakland University to set up satellites here. And the reason is, I've had these conversations in the Middle Eastern community, and there's a big demand for students to come from the Middle East that want the culture of Dearborn. But they don't want to live in Rochester. They don't want to live in Ypsilanti. They want to live here in Dearborn. So we can have the ability to have these schools set up satellites here. And imagine, just think of the opportunity of all these students that have money coming here and being a part of the community and the business activity.
Okay, we're going to take one question from Zuhair. If we can make sure the question is quick, Zuhair, I'm going to have you stand next to me.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I live in Dearborn Heights, but I do have business in Dearborn, and I bought my first house 1985 at 6421 Kenilworth. That was the first property I bought in the city of Dearborn because it was safe city, it was good city to raise family. I have several questions. One question I'm going to ask. Are you both willing to hold accountable those who wasted $470 million, not the 370, for the CSO? This is taxpayers' money. It was wasted in a way I think it's shameful. And you just said, Mr. Pirelli, accountability. Are you guys willing to walk in the first day and get those out of the offices who wasted that money? Thank you.
We'll go with Jim first, since Abdullah started.
Yeah. So, thank you, Sohair. The saddest part about, well, it's not the saddest part. The saddest part is about the money. I was pounding the table at the beginning of this debate because you never could have gotten away with this in the business world. There is no way the leadership in this community, whether it be in the mayor's office or the city council, could ever have gotten away with increasing it by $400 million over time. And nobody's accountable. Nobody is going to take the hit for it. Well, as I said, the voters have a chance to make them take the hit for it. As far as accountability, the sad part is nothing's been solved. We just had another, catastrophe of a flood. It didn't have to be this way. The morning after the floods, I was out there thinking to myself, how in the hell did this happen again? So to answer your specific question, yes. As a financial person, I absolutely want to understand and go back and look at what has transpired and what has happened during that 2007 to 2021 timeframe to get us to where we are today. Are contractors at fault? And if they are, do they have exposure to the city? Could we bring litigation against them and get some of the money back that are, again, as I said, this is the residents' money. It's not, if either of us were to be elected, it's not our money, it's the residents' money. And so that would be certainly something I would pursue, Zuhair. Thank you.
Abdullah?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. And I'll demonstrate an example of how I was able to accomplish this actually in Lansing. In the Health and Human Services Department, they invested about $150 million to build a computer program for the Health and Human Services Department employees, and it failed. And what happened then is they put another RFP to rebuild the program after losing $150 million, and they awarded it to the same vendor. We put forth a bipartisan package which was passed and signed into law that says, as a contractor, if you promise us the deliverable and you don't deliver, you have to then put up the money to redo that project yourself. That's accountability. And one of the things I can say is over my last 5 years as state representative, I've built a strong relationship with the residents of Dearborn, where we have a trusted brand because I've been accessible, I've been transparent, and I hold myself accountable before anybody else. And I think that's the type of leadership we want to bring to the city. Using the community to build our teams so that they have transparency and accountability, and those that they are helping appoint to these directorships across the board. And so that's something that we're also going to do. And so the short answer is yes. We have examples of how we've done this in Lansing, and hopefully with your support, it's something that we're going to do again. And so I'm asking for your vote on August 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We will be moving on to closing statements. Abdullah, we will start with you. You will have 2 minutes to close and to tell us why you feel that you should be elected as Dearborn's next mayor.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the hosts of this wonderful forum. And thank you to Jim and Claudia, who is here as well for the opening statements. In the aftermath of the flooding, my team and I helped clean basements all across the city. And I'll never forget one resident, Maryam. 7.5 feet of sewage blanketed her whole basement, and she had lost everything, including sentimental items that can never be replaced. This happened to her twice before, in 2014 and 2018, and she rebuilt. And now when it happened to her again, she's asking, should she rebuild, or should she finally call it quits and move? Back in the 80s, after the flooding in Taylor, government officials used a creative solution. They added retention basins and turned them into city-owned golf courses, which lessened the impact. After the flooding in 2014, Westland overhauled its grease trap ordinances, and it improved the maintenance of their lines by blasting jets of water to clear debris. Ann Arbor's building a detention basin. The city of Detroit turned Oakwood Boulevard's medians into retention basins and rain gardens. Ann Arbor offers storm credits to residents to plant rain gardens on their properties, which can absorb hundreds and thousands of gallons of water. In 2014, Dearborn flooded. And the question that people are asking is, what did Dearborn do? It should have been a wake-up call that climate change is real and that Dearborn is not prepared. 100-year floods should happen just that, every 100 years, not every 4 or 5. So the reality is our government and our city's leaders failed us. When we examine the direction of our city over the last 10 years, we must ask, what has been done to improve the quality of life for working families? We have higher property taxes, although the city has closed community pools and libraries. We have higher water rates, but persistent and ongoing issues with flooding. We have a skyrocketing number of traffic incidents, and according to a census estimate, we have a decreasing population, the signs of a struggling city. I'm running for mayor to tackle the real issues facing our working families with bold and innovative ideas. This is the city where my wife and I want to grow our family. But if we want our children to grow up with the same love and passion that we have for Dearborn, we must tackle the issues that matter, and we must have the political courage to take them on. My name is Abdullah Hamoud. and I hope to earn your vote on August 3rd to be Dearborn's next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Jim?
Thank you. Thanks again to Hussein and What's Up Media and Press and Guide, as well as our moderators and Abdullah and Claudia. Like many of you, the last few weeks have made something very clear to me. Politics, as usual, in Dearborn, Michigan, is not working. Career politicians want to take all the credit when everything's going fine, and none of the blame when things go bad. It's like accountability is a dirty word. What we need in Dearborn is fresh energy, new ideas. I will bring this innovation experience to City Hall. My 40 years in business has taught me you cannot pass the buck. What our residents will get with me is someone who listens and someone who has deep roots in this city. Someone who will always be accountable to the residents. My opponents say experience matters. But what has their experience done for you? Failed projects, overblown finances, and most importantly, a failure to take responsibility. That's where I focus. Failure to take responsibility. They say experience matters as if government is a top secret file at Fort Knox. Well, guess what? It's not. We all know government works. What has failed is their approach. I'll come to the table utilizing innovation and technology and harness the talent in this city, of which there is much. Diversity is our greatest asset, and I will ensure that this administration of mine reflects that. My appointees will look like our city so we can serve everyone much more effectively. This is why I've campaigned in all of our communities. Some of my opponents haven't even crossed Southfield Freeway. They act like you need a visa to cross the freeway. I know it's only my name on the ballot, but I also want to say how proud I am to have my wife at my side. My wife of 39 years this September. She's knocked on doors. She's a nurse. She gave shots at the Dearborn Vaccination Center. And when you vote for me, you get her love and support as well. And also, she knows how to tell me like it is when I need to hear that. The bottom line is this. If you think career politicians running against me have made your life better in Dearborn, then vote for them. But if you think this community needs new ideas, fresh energy, and a new approach to how we move forward in this community, I'm Jim Pirelli, August 3rd. I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you both for your time, and thank you, WhatsApp News Network, for hosting this, and we wish you both the best of luck on the rest of your races.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to our moderators, Attorney Mustafa Hawili and Dr. Christina. Thank you to everyone that attended in person, and also to whoever watched. A lot of you watched this online. This forum will be available on our Facebook page. It will stay there. Also, it will be available on our YouTube page and our website, www.whatsappmedianetwork.com. Feel free to join the conversation, write comments, your feedback. If you have any question to the candidate, you can write it there. Also, don't forget to share this live stream so people can basically watch it. And also, the most important thing, get out and vote. You can vote from now until August 3rd. Thank you, and thank you to everyone, and good night.